Choosing Home by ginnyrules27, Chapter 28. Time passed slowly, but it passed, and without any sign of trouble brewing, much to Ben and Mal's delight. It seemed that, as 11 months came and went, everything would be going back to normal. Battle strategies transformed into wedding plans. Guard rosters changed into lists of kids being brought from the Isle. Claudine had even come out of her shell, developing a relationship with Aurora and the Phillips. It was odd, but in a way, Claudine had almost become their second daughter. Never a replacement for Audrey, because a child could never be replaced. But for someone who had their life impacted by Freddie just as much as the Roses had. But as life went on in Auradon, it also carried on over on the Isle. And Audrey was currently sitting in front of the casters, smirking as Freddie glared. Now, one may be asking themselves, how in the world was Audrey still alive on the Isle? After all, she was a former royal on the Isle of the Lost. Well, Freddie had quickly realised that after the failed face-off against the rats, and after recovering from the wound left by Claudine's dagger, had personally trained Audrey in how to throw daggers accurately. He wouldn't have any member of the Angels be seen as a joke. Plus, he had his own little reward system for when she hit the target. Of course, that reward system, in addition to the fact that Audrey had grown up in Auradon all her life, had resulted in a rather interesting discovery. Audrey was now pregnant once more, and it seemed like this pregnancy had caused her to become even more ruthless than she had been previously. It had been her idea to recruit the casters after all. You know, I really don't see why we need those magic users. Freddie scoffed as Audrey sat in front of him, having proposed a team-up between the Angels and the casters. We're doing well enough dealing with those rats now that Claudine's disappeared. Didn't you once tell me that you were going to enlist them to wage war on the Isle? Audrey asked. You're thinking too small. Oh, am I? Freddie growled. Audrey nodded. Mal and Ben can easily send aid to the Isle. But what aid can the rats give them? Freddie paused. You may have a point. After all, we've still got the barrier surrounding the Isle. It's not as if the rats could pick up and sail off to their aid. Exactly, Audrey nodded. Here's my thinking. We don't immediately attack Ben or Mal. We go after Aurora. Wasn't that your kingdom? Strat scoffed. Audrey glared at him. Your betters are speaking, Strat. But yes, it was my kingdom, and I want it back. Once Fred and I assume the throne of King and Queen of Aurora, we'll have the Aurora forces to our aid to go after Auradon. Hold up, Fred and you? What about the rest of us? Sheila exclaimed, glaring at her with Lachlan by her side. It was no mystery that the two of them hated having to report to Audrey, even more than they hated having to keep Audrey alive. All she was a distraction to Freddie from returning to either of them. Not to mention Zevon was getting too cocky, having access to all the unallied girls of the Isle. Strat was trying, but he was no Freddie. He didn't have the stamina to have a fling a month yet after all. You will all stay here until we send for you, Audrey said, waving off Shayla's concern. Last I checked, Princess, you're not Fred. Shayla snapped. And last I checked, that's not a way to talk to your second in command. Freddie growled. Watch your tongue, Shayla. We used to talk this way to Claudine all the time, and you never took issue with it, Lachlan spoke up. Times change, Freddie said simply. You're not talking to Claudine anymore. You're talking to Audrey, and you'll treat her with the respect her station demands. Since when do we treat anyone from Auradon with respect? Shayla scoffed. Since I said so, Freddie growled. The threat behind his words was perfectly clear. Stop talking unless you want to be used for a target practice again. The last angel to get such an honor was Strat, and Audrey had only missed once, and she claimed it was because there was no point in killing Strat. Not when the angels were already 3 people down. Yes, Fred, Shayla, Lachlan and Strat grumbled. Zevon, are you sure you want to deal with them? A blonde girl murmured behind the black-haired boy, pulling Audrey out of her thoughts. The reputation of the angels alone, plus with the addition of a Auradon royal. Without hesitation, Audrey whipped out her dagger and launched it straight into the girl's side. Hearing it hit, she turned back to Zevon and smirked. Now then, why don't we get down to more important matters? Like destroying Mal? So, it seems the Warfrats were mistaken when it came to the princess's aim, Zevon said with a smirk of his own. Good. I'd hate to be dealing with a simpering moron. Those gutter rats don't know anything, Audrey scoffed. Their brains have turned to mush from cozying up to Mal and Uma. On that we can agree, Maddie nodded. I've had a few flings with them. They're not as loyal to Mal as they claim, if they can do that. But I take it you're not here to talk about that. No, Audrey said. We're here to make a deal. Interesting. What kind of deal? Zevon asked, leaning forward slightly. After all, it's rare for the angels to ask something of us. As you are aware, Ben and Mal now have a constant watch on the delivery barge, and word around the isle is that you four are the best when it comes to potions. We need a sleeping draught. And if we do this, what's in it for us? Maddie asked. You're new to the Isle, Princess, but you should know. VKs don't do something for nothing. Obviously, Audrey scoffed. I want Beastie Jr. out of the picture, Zevon stated. I don't care how, but I want him gone. What is it with guys and wanting Mal? Audrey thought as she fought to keep her face blank. There's Ben, and Fred wanted her when we first planned on taking over Auradon. And now Zevon? Did she spell all these guys or something? Done, she said, as ideas started to come to the forefront of her mind. Out of the picture didn't necessarily mean dead, after all. She had Fred to treat her like the queen she was, but Ben needed to be taken down a peg or two. Maybe he could learn to take orders instead of give them. And you? Audrey asked Maddie as a smirk formed on her lips. What do you want? I want Mal powerless and cowering in front of me as I use her own powers on her, Maddie said with a low growl in her voice. I'm done being in her shadow. Audrey glanced over at Freddie, who nodded slightly from his spot in the corner. Done, she said as she looked at Maddie, the smirk still on her face. That would honestly be something she would love to see. Ooh, maybe I could make Ben watch. After I'm done with her, you both can have free reign, Freddie said, his voice low. Now, Fred, I see no reason why we can't share, Zevon said with a smirk. Yeah, how do we know that you being done with her won't mean she'll be dead? Maddie asked. When you two get turned into a dragon's plaything, then we can talk about sharing, Freddie said, a low growl to his voice. I get her first. And besides, if she really is the daughter of Hades and Persephone as she claims, death won't come easy for Mal. Though she'll beg for it, Audrey added. Zevon and Maddie shared a smirk. Well, I do like the sound of that, Maddie said, but I want to be the one to make her beg for it. To use her own powers on her while she cries to make it stop. Make us the sleeping draught, and you'll be doing that before you know it, Audrey told her. Do we have a deal? It's a deal, Zevon nodded. You'll get your potion. Pleasure doing business with you. Oh, believe me, Princess, the pleasure is all ours, Maddie said with a smirk. Freddie rolled his eyes. How long will it take? 2 weeks, Zevon told him. Any shorter and we risk killing the gods. Not something I particularly care about, but that might draw attention. Longer than I would like, but the reward will be worth it, Audrey said. Like I said, it's the shortest amount of time we can go on the potion before we risk killing someone. And dead bodies attract attention, Zevon told her. I can wait. All good things, right? Audrey said with a smirk. Exactly, Maddie nodded. Though I don't know why anyone would want good things. You're still learning, but I must admit, you're not as simpering as I thought, Zevon said, looking her up and down. Audrey rolled her eyes. I'm a fast learner. Simpering is better for Auradon. Oh, I like her, Zevon said with a small chuckle. Paws off, Zevon, Freddie growled. You'll have to make do with another fling. Audrey, let's go. We've got what we came here for. Gladly, Audrey nodded as she stood up. I want that dagger back, by the way. Honestly, Isla scoffed as she walked off. For badness sake, Quinn, stop whimpering and go and patch it up. It may be the first time you've been hit with a dagger, but it won't be the last if you keep acting like a prissy princess. She dragged Quinn off, leaving Audrey to stare after her. She had to admit, making someone whimper in pain was rather enjoyable. And I'll be sure to make my brother feel the same when we get to Aurora. He deserves to feel a quarter of the pain I felt when my family tossed me aside, like I was something they could ignore. Why wasn't she at this meeting? Freddie demanded. She's the leader of your little gang, right? Well, yes, but the Isle knows how you feel about women leaders, Fred, Zevon said. Or should I say Freddie? Treating you with that much deference was disgusting. Freddie growled as he stepped up to close the distance between him and Zevon, subtly standing between casters and the small baby bump Audrey was now displaying. Soon we'll have our revenge on Mal and Ben, Audrey whispered, resting a hand on Freddie's shoulder. Soon we'll have our daughter back. Oh, so it's a girl then? Zevon mused, causing Audrey to look over at him. What are you talking about? Freddie demanded, narrowing his eyes. Zevon rolled his eyes. Oh, Fred. The entire Isle has heard you snarling rants about that baby at one point or another. The only thing you left out of your rants was whether or not it was a boy or a girl. Now the mystery's solved. Audrey's eyes narrowed. She wasn't exactly sure if it was a good thing that another gang knew where her daughter was. If it weren't for the fact that they needed the casters for their potions expertise, she'd have had a dagger in them faster than they could blink. Or more like Shayla would, but she'd give the order. Calm down, princess. We're not stupid enough to go after your brat, Zevon said, rolling his eyes. We just made an alliance, after all. Fred, we should go, Shayla spoke up, handing Audrey back her dagger. Freddie nodded. Come on, he told Audrey, before looking back at Zevon. 2 weeks. I'll send Shayla for your potion. You hold up your end, and we'll hold up ours, Maddie nodded. It's rather hard for us to keep up our end if you don't hold up yours, Freddie told her. As I said, 2 weeks. Any later than that and you'll be our next new target practice. Maddie crossed her arms over her chest. We may be VKs, but we keep our word. Okay then, Audrey thought as they walked out of the spell palace. 2 weeks. I can make it 2 weeks. Mal won't know what hit her. You were quiet on our way back, Freddie noted as they walked back to the haven. Audrey shrugged. Just thinking. What brought this on? Freddie shrugged. Just asking. I wasn't there before, you know. Just wanted to make sure there was nothing wrong. Isn't that against the VK code? Audrey asked with a small smile. Father and Ben were worried over nothing, Shows what they know. Well, you were in Auradon being held prisoner while Beastie and Mal sent me here, Freddie told her as the other angels huddled in a nearby corner. If I'd been there would have been no way for them to take our daughter. Audrey nodded. I know. They wouldn't let me hold her. She thought softly. My own mother! I barely know what she looks like. I don't even know her name. I wanted to name her Leah, after my grandmother. Freddie tilted his head. Leah, why does that name sound familiar? Wasn't that the Auradon royal who got eaten by the hyenas? Strat called over and Freddie nodded. Audrey paled. What? Oh yeah, the wolf rat allies over there took great pains to know there was nothing left of her. Strat! Freddie barked, seeing how pale Audrey's face had gotten. Nothing was going to happen to Audrey or their kid. Both were his to get off the Isle after all. They killed her, she said softly. Audrey had known, of course, that Leah had died on the Isle, but she didn't know how. Those furry demons! I'll show them what it's like to mess with the royal family of Aurora. How would you like a hyena fur-lined jacket? As much as I would love that, you're forgetting one thing, Freddie said. And what's that? Audrey snapped. Freddie motioned to her stomach. The mangy beasts aren't going to care that you're with child. They'll just see it as a snack. Audrey glowered but sat down, crossing her arms over her chest. I'm not a big fan of when you're right, you know. Really? I'm quite fond of it. Freddie chuckled, smirking slightly, as he felt a slight thump from inside Audrey's belly. But think about this. Once we've taken care of Beastie Jr. and Mal, you can use those mangy beasts for target practice whenever you want. Or I can go after them now, Audrey muttered, but she didn't get up. She knew that she wasn't going to risk the safety of her child. Her heir over some smelly, stupid hyenas. She could avenge her grandmother later. Is it just me, or is this the most un-VK Fred's ever been? Shayla thought. If I didn't know better, I'd say he was going soft. Actually, he's been soft the minute Audrey got to the Isle. Asking about the rumours she'd given birth while in Auradon. Yeah, it would have been his kid, but so what? He's never cared about any of his other flings getting pregnant. Granted, he was lucky that none of his other flings did get pregnant. He must have a good sense of timing. But then the princess comes along, and not only does he actually care, but she gets pregnant twice. Being in Auradon changed Fred, Lachlan muttered, pulling Shayla out of her thoughts, as she looked over at the redhead. Yeah, Shayla muttered back, as the two of them listened in on Fred and Audrey's conversation. Talking about baby stuff. And did he just mention names? Mary, if the brat's a girl? He did. Strat nodded, joining the little huddle. After his mother. I'd almost say Fred's gotten feelings for Audrey, if it weren't for the fact that Fred doesn't do feelings. He's almost like Dustin in that regard, only without the sinning. Better take care that Fred doesn't hear you compare him to Dustin, Shayla said, keeping her voice low. Strat shrugged. It's not like he'll stab me. We need the numbers. Besides, with how aggressive Henry's been at face-offs lately, he'd be more than likely to kill me than Fred. Don't you lot have anything better to do than gossip like old maids? Freddie snapped at them. Strat rolled his eyes. Come on. I may not particularly like you two, but you don't need to watch them get at it. Ugh, that's right. Shayla shuddered, having walked in on Freddie and Audrey a couple of times. Audrey hit her target at the meeting after all. The three former rats looked at each other, slight disgust on their faces. Oh, not disgust at the thought of the act, but more the disgust of it being with someone from Auradon. Oh, God! Lachlan grumbled as Freddie started to close the distance between himself and Audrey. I'm not staying for that. With how they're carrying on, it's like they're trying for twins or something. Shayla shook her head as the 3 former rats quickly fled from the haven. The activities in the other room, known only to the 2 occupants as the door swung shut, blocking any view from the outside the world might have had. Though, inside, Audrey smirked as Freddie's lips touched her neck. 2 weeks was nothing. And then Ben and Mel were going to pay. Though, first, she'd start with the little spare of a brother who thought he could swoop in and steal her life. Philip, you'd better watch your back. I know where you sleep after all, she thought with an inward growl. Auradon, you'd better be ready. I'm coming home. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh boy, okay. Jeez Louise. Well, I guess it makes sense for Audrey to get pregnant quickly if they go at it like that. And honestly, I don't approve, but the reward system does sound like a good way to make her hit her target. Evil love. It's quite something, isn't it? And the fact that she is wanting to kill her own brother. God, she really is the female Freddy. He wouldn't hesitate when it goes to going after Claudine. And now she's going after Phil. Oh God. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.